Welcome to the Weekly Squeak, your weekly geeky squeak with me, Christian Chiller. This week I have a roundup of links as always, and then I have an interview with the creators of Krisp.ai. Product Hunt of the Year from 2018, actually. It's a smart little background application that adds background noise cancellation to your input and output. So very helpful for all these remote meetings we now have. I am still away in Italy, recording this time on my backup mic again in a co-working space. It seems to be nigh on impossible to ever find anywhere that is quiet in Italy, so I've shut all the windows, but there's still someone, I don't know what they're doing, clanking around, doing something or other in the background. So hopefully you won't pick that up, and maybe I should just be using Krisp.ai, I suppose. Anyway, more of that later. Let's start off with my links of the week. This is a combination of posts, actually. The first one is on one of my favorites, DNet from Steve Ranger. And then the second is actually an official press release from Huawei. Now, one of the interesting outcomes of the America-China sort of ongoing trade war, sort of on-off trade war, is that Huawei are struggling to get their products to America, but also get American products. And of course, on smartphones, this includes Android. Android is an American IP. I'm pretty sure that most of the Chinese phone manufacturers, well, the big ones anyway, have had alternatives to Android in progress for some time. And Samsung, who I know from Korea, also have had Tizen, of course. But Huawei then, in the past couple of weeks, announced that they have been working on their own alternative to Android called Harmony or HarmonyOS. I think they're just picking different names there for different markets. Interestingly, they were working on this for some time for some of their other devices. And also it's worth noting that Huawei have added their kind of own skin to Android for quite some time. It's one of the reasons I stopped using Huawei, because I found their skinning just too much for me, to be honest with you. But then, interestingly as well, they announced that, and this is where I refer to the official blog post, that they're going to open source it. They don't really go into any great detail about what this means exactly. What is going to be open sourced? What are the licensing implications? What can people do with it, etc., etc.? What will this actually mean? But this is all pretty interesting because, of course, other companies have tried to create alternatives to the duopoly of Android and iOS. Even a company like Microsoft, granted that was some time ago in a different setting, and they were trying to maybe do too much with it. But is the time right for another option? Is the time right for another option that I guess will operate much like Android, in that it can be applied to different devices? Or will it be open source and purely for Huawei devices? Will we have a third operating system targeting what is, granted, a very large hardware vendor, but a very large hardware vendor in very particular parts of the world? So it's interesting to see what happens here. I'm really interested to see when we actually get some source code for HarmonyOS 2 to see kind of what's going on under the hood. Is it just some strange Android fork, or is it something completely new? And of course, Google has also been working on Fuchsia OS, which doesn't really help Huawei's problems, but there's another kind of bubbling under the surface option that no one's really sure about quite what it's going to be used for some time too. And it's worth noting, before anyone says anything, there are, of course, other options out there for operating systems for your phone. KaiOS, Sailfish, two that I can definitely think of, but they're all very, very minority market shares at the moment. Next, another new interesting piece from Darren Pollock on Decrypt. The number of publishers on Brave is it's a Chromium-based browser, been around for a little while, sort of put privacy first, but also has this interesting crypto component. It's become very big in the crypto space where I work a lot in at the moment, because it has these BAT tokens, these tokens where you can basically be paid and pay for content. But this always requires people to sign up for it. And Brave has been doing quite well recently. The numbers have jumped up 1,200% since mid-2018, including actually some reasonably high-profile publishers now as well, including Twitter. You can actually pay people's tweets if you like what you read. I would really want to get on and try this, but I think it's only open to US residents right now, which is annoying, but I may go and have another look soon to get a bit of a hands-on, because I find the whole concept quite fascinating. I would like to actually pay some of the content creators, but I'd also like to be paid. So it's something I really want to investigate and dig into a bit more. Well, let's dig into these numbers a little bit more. So this is based on Reddit user data or data from Backgrowth. I mean, we don't know how trusted they can all be. But the number of Brave Awards publishers sat at just under 19,000 in mid-July 2018. And now they are nearly at, or actually just over 250,000, and including, again, some large publishers. So it's coming. It sort of popped out of nowhere, Brave, from this minority browser to suddenly becoming quite popular. I think they solved the mobile syncing problem. They got a lot of the kind of extras they were adding on to Chrome working quite well. And a lot of people are getting a bit fed up with Chrome, and a lot of the alternatives are now growing in popularity. I've heard numerous people recently saying that they use Edge again. Now it is Chromium-based and cross-platform. So the browser wars are not over yet. And finally, in my new technology, well, not new technology, this is about Hacker News, which isn't new, but it's not old, if that makes any sense. It's not vintage. Well, okay, it's still current. Let's just go with that definition. This was a strangely charming post on The New Yorker from Anna Wiener about the lonely work of moderating Hacker News. And I think the title grabbed my attention because there's been a lot of these posts recently around the kind of mechanical Turkification, if that can be a word, the horrible underpaid workers sitting in darkened rooms moderating AI services and moderating horrible content on platforms like Facebook. And I thought it was going to be another one of those posts. But it really wasn't, actually, because the moderators of Hacker News, in fact, the only employers of Hacker News at its parent company, Y Combinator, are two seemingly aging kind of technologists who almost act like an odd couple, the sort of classic married odd couple. And it's quite a wonderful post, sort of hearing about how they got into it and the fact that this website that, I don't know if it still is, but was kind of what all the cool hip people in Silicon Valley would refer to every day, is run by these sort of aging, I almost imagine them slightly overweight, grey-haired men who got into it via Lisp programming and seem quite old school in some ways. And actually, they don't really let on to the fact that they find it, well, moderating these sorts of sites can often be quite grueling, and they occasionally mention that sometimes it gets tedious, but they actually seem to quite enjoy what they're doing and manage to handle it fairly well most of the time. I don't know if the article just decided not to go into that kind of side of things, or they were just genuinely positive about it, but it actually seems they quite enjoy the experience. It's sort of the counter story of moderating a site to the usual stories you get, which is quite interesting. There's also some insights in there, of course, into the persona of some of the people online, which we all know about, just another kind of confirmation of that, unfortunately, about how obnoxious people can be and how people just argue about the most bizarre, petty, pathetic things so much. But anyway, if you are interested in hearing the story behind this bizarre page that looks like it's still stuck in the 90s, but it still remains very, very popular, and how it is moderated, because it is, and how a little bit of how it works, because actually there is some technology behind it, despite it just looking like some kind of online form that does next to nothing, then it's a wonderful little post. It's a long read, so it gets into some great details there, and I really enjoyed reading this, so I hope you do too. 2 posts now from Computing History. I love Computing History. Another nice plug for the first episode of the Enthusiastic Amateur podcast with Sinclair Target of the 2-Bit History blog, where we talk about computing history, just that. And I think at least this post is probably one that we could have discussed, one that he could have written and possibly gone into a little bit more detail because it's quite short. Something from Mental Floss by Virginia Hughes, The History of Control-Alt-Delete. In 2013, Bill Gates admitted Ctrl+Alt+Delete was a mistake and blamed IBM. I don't really know why it's a mistake. I mean, it's a weird keyboard combination, but it's no worse than Command-Option-Escape like it is on a Mac, really. And this key combination was created in 1981 by David Bradley, working at IBM. And it was basically a shorthand way of trying to restart a machine after a crash, because they crashed a lot. And this keyboard combination basically bypasses the memory tests, which are the bit that takes a long time in computers rebooting in those days, and just resets the machine. I think maybe where Bill Gates gets annoyed is that as obviously Windows gets put on top of this later, this is pre-Windows, then I suppose they have to kind of figure out what to do, because you can't really just reset the system. Ctrl+Alt+Delete on a modern Windows machine kind of brings up a couple of different options. Restarting crashed applications, task managers, and a whole bunch of other things, not just resetting the machine bash like that. So I suppose it was more that users had got used to the key combination, and Windows and Microsoft kind of had to accommodate it, even though they didn't want to, which is probably why Bill Gates was so annoyed. And the wonderful thing about it is it apparently took him about 15 minutes to code this key combination that so many people know, and it took one programmer an absolute minuscule amount of time to implement. Wouldn't we all love that kind of badge under our belt? And finally, another piece on computing history called "Was Email a Mistake?" by Carl Newport, another New Yorker article, actually. This is a nice little trip down memory lane, talking about how it kind of uses email as a way to discuss synchronous versus asynchronous communication, the way that we traditionally used to all get together in a room or maybe on a phone conference and talk to each other or at each other or argue with each other at the same time. This is sometimes effective, but sometimes difficult to arrange. And various companies, and there's a wonderful image painted, shall we say, of the old CIA offices. And you may have seen these in some other places. I seem to remember these in maybe where my dad used to work in a bank as well. This way that you would have messenger tubes sending messages backwards and forwards on paper between people. I guess there's also fax and a whole bunch of other precursors to email, where people didn't have to all get together to talk, but they could send messages to each other, which is sort of synchronous, but not completely. It's sort of slow synchronous, I suppose, but still, sometimes that's kind of the best way. And then when email came along, it enabled people to not all have to get together in one place to discuss something. And I suppose in its early days, it fulfilled that task very well. And then, of course, it became kind of overused, and now we have this plethora of alternatives to it. And we're kind of almost back where we started, where many people are now saying we should just have more meetings again. So go figure. But anyway, if you're interested in at least reading a little bit about email's heyday, and I do remember when it was maybe better used or less used, I'm not sure. It's hard to say. And I suppose there were not really any other options anyway. And I also remember kind of what we used to do before it. So barely. Maybe I'm imagining things. Maybe I just didn't have a job where we needed to talk to each other. It's a great little post, actually, and with some wonderful imagery that goes into great detail about how synchronous versus asynchronous conversation can work and collaboration can work, some of the tools that have sprung up to facilitate this, and I guess where we can go from here. And I suppose as we're all drowning in emails and notifications right now, this is an important thing to sort of step back and think about, what are we actually trying to accomplish in this, and what would serve that purpose best. I hope you enjoyed my links for the week. And now I have my interview for the week. I'm probably going to murder the surname here, with David Bagdasarian of Krisp.ai, Product Hunt of the Year 2018. A awesome little application that sits in the background of your Mac and your Windows, and soon coming to iOS. And it removes background noise from input and output audio. Perfect for all those synchronous/asynchronous communications we spoke about earlier. I hope you enjoy the interview.
So I'm David. I'm the co-founder and CEO Krisp. So Krisp is a very simple app. It does one job, and it does it really great. It's a software you download to your laptop, be it Mac or Windows, and it gives you, it registers itself as a virtual microphone and a virtual speaker, and it gives you a button. You click the button, and the background noise disappears in calls like this. Mm-hmm. Okay, so if I had background noise at my side, which I don't have right now, I would click the button and you wouldn't hear the background noise, but you would hear my voice mm-hmm. when I speak. Okay, and by using your Krisp virtual speaker, if you had background noise from your side coming to me, I would click the button and the background noise would disappear for me. Okay. So that's what Krisp does, and it does it in an innovative way. So we use machine learning to distinguish what's background noise and what's human speech, and then separate them in real time.
Okay, why did you start this in the first place?
A great question. So I used to work at a company called Twilio. So it's a communications platform. Yeah. So I used to work there, and I'm originally from Armenia. So I always enjoyed, spending my summers in Armenia while I worked there. So because of the time zone, time difference, sometimes I was ending up in situations where I need to take a call with my team, but I was, in a lot of background noise, maybe in cafes or music in the background. So I wish there was a button to exactly what Krisp does, right? But I didn't have experience in audio and machine learning. And when I met my friend, who is my co-founder and CTO, Arto, he really liked the idea, and so he holds a PhD in math. He assembled a team of people who he did his PhD with in the past. And after some time, after a year of the first conversation, we decided to start a company. So I left Twilio. We started working on Krisp.
Okay. And I mean, the idea is simple, but it's a very good idea. Are there competitors doing something similar, or are some of the VoIP applications that people commonly use attempting to do this themselves? I mean, or why not, I guess, would be the question if there aren't.
Yeah. So I'm sure there are some VoIP companies are trying to do this, and I'm sure bigger companies are trying to do this. Actually, I know that for a fact. And there are some competitors that, and by saying, look, noise cancellation is an old problem. It's not new, right? The approach of applying AI to it is comparably new. Mm-hmm. And, we don't know any other company that has been successful in applying it in the right way, so to say. The general approach is the same. You collect a lot of background noise, as a data collection, and you collect a lot of, not noisy human speech. And then when you mix together, you get a lot of synthetic noisy speech as your training data. But that's not enough. Like if you have, a machine learning experts in your team, you can get to some level of performance. But the problem is that human ears are very sensitive to error, right? We can detect when the human voice is impacted by noise cancellation. So we are very sensitive to artifacts. And it's very difficult to make that leap by just training a neural network with that data to optimizing it so that there are no artifacts that are annoying for people. So our IP and our advantage is that we made that leap by because we had 7 PhDs in the team who have mathematical and physics background. So we somehow were able to do it better than others do it.
And I found it interesting. You say you're doing you're doing data collection on background noise, which is kind of, well, it's something that nobody wants, but then in your case, it's something you do want because you need to analyze it.
Yeah, we don't do it from Krisp. We never collect any audio of end user.
Okay.
From Krisp. Okay, so no, we have spent actually 3 years developing these algorithms, and the noise data that we have collected, we have over 10,000 distinct noises in our collection now. We have collected from different places. There are some public data sets in the internet, but we never do it from the Krisp application. And and that's very important for us.
For sure.
Krisp.ai never collects that, and it's very well articulated in our privacy policy.
The thing I'm fascinated here, because a lot of projects you hear that use machine learning and artificial intelligence are usually based in the internet. So they have access to vast amounts of data to process. But yours is mostly running as a desktop application, and it's not that large. The downloaded file is less than 100 megabytes. So if you're not sending the data anywhere, how are you managing to kind of have all this machine learning local on a client side?
Well, that's a great question, and that's one of the struggles we have been dealing with in the 3 years, right? So our first models were quite large, and you wouldn't be able to run them on the CPUs. You can run them on NVIDIA GPUs, that's fine, but that's not widely deployed on laptops, right? For the communications use case. So you mentioned 100 megabytes. Actually, we have 3 different machine learning models in that. So our model is 30 megabyte right now. And we managed to design it so that it can run on general purpose CPUs, right? That's one of the advantages that our technology has. In the same time, though, if you want to do it, and the reason we can do it also is that because we process maximum 2 streams on a laptop. If you want to do it on scale, if you let's say if you want to deploy it in Verizon or in Twilio, right, you would need to process thousands, 10,000, and maybe more streams in parallel. For that, you would need to run them on GPUs. We have such technology as well, but it's not our primary business. My point is, yes, it was very difficult to bring it down to this size. And actually, our model also runs on phones. Pretty soon, we are going to have a Krisp for iPhone. So it took us a lot of engineering time to do that.
Okay. And I have a Mac, so I haven't tried the Windows version, but the nice thing is you do seem to also run pretty natively. So it adds audio input and output kind of in the proper way. It doesn't sort of hijack your current audio. And for example, I use a program to record interviews called Audio Hijack that takes advantage of this in many ways to enable me to record Google Hangouts and Skype and things like that. So I'd be able to continue to use that with Krisp because it does everything the right way. And I'm assuming you do something similar on Windows. So again, how did you manage to just make everything run so well, I suppose?
It took us 6 months, which is a long time for me. I'm an engineer by training, right? To build a Windows audio driver, and apparently it's so difficult to do. And there are only few experts in the world, and we were happy to hire one of them.
Well, this is why I can't give up my Mac, because Audio Hijack is only available on Mac, and it's amazing for recording podcasts.
We wanted to, because look, when we started the company, we thought that we would license this to bigger companies like VoIP companies and apps, right? But early on we saw that working with them is going to be very slow for a startup. like us, and in startups, speed is your pace is very important. So we came up with the idea of Krisp because it would be a way to give this value to end users without being dependent on others, right? So yeah, like that's the idea of virtual microphone and virtual speaker. And yeah, first we did Mac version. We put it on Product Hunt. The recognition was pretty amazing. It became Product of the Year on Product Hunt, and we immediately knew that people want something like this, right? So we started working on Windows, and here we are. But yeah, so like there are a lot of engineering problems if you want to solve this on a virtual microphone and speaker layer. Like latency is a problem. Like there are so many compatibility issues with apps and then with drivers, and we are spending a lot of time on fixing these issues.
And the other kind of technical thing I was interested in is you don't claim to work with every audio application. You claim to work with a lot. So is it more that some of the ones that you may not work with, I mean, I haven't found one yet, but I'm sure they're there. Are they the ones that don't really respect the operating system themselves, so you can't really kind of feed in with the framework you normally feed in with? Because if an application respects the audio settings of the operating system, then I guess you work. So
no, actually the reason is different. Okay. So we work with any application today, right, which allows choosing or selecting a microphone from inside the app. Now, I think in a month or so, Krisp will also support becoming a system microphone. You can go to system settings and choose Krisp. And when we do that, we will say that for sure that we will support all the applications. Now we can't say that because there are some apps that don't allow that.
Okay. I don't know which ones they are. I don't think I ever use them, but fortunately, but anyway, I use them on external
if you want to do like WhatsApp, the desktop client, it doesn't do like audio settings.
Okay. Fair enough. I've never tried that one. Yeah. Cause I use external microphones a lot. So it's important. So
Yep.
All right. Okay. Fair enough. Now the one that interests me the most with, so you have a couple of examples on the website of, background sounds: street, screaming child, airport, coffee shop, scrum meeting. Background sounds of a scrum meeting. I'm not sure what they are. Conferencing. But so the one that interests me the most, because you did mention earlier that you extract the background noise from the voice speaking, but especially say coffee shop. I mean, coffee shop has some other sounds as well, but there will be some of those instances where there may be other people speaking quite close by. Can you also cope with those, or are they a bit more challenging right now?
They're certainly very, very challenging compared to background noise. So today, what Krisp does is it separates what's non-human speech from human speech. Okay, so when we say background noise, it's non. But if there is a chatter in the background, depending how far it is, it can be recognized as a cafeteria noise or bubble noise. That's the technical term for that. So, and then I can't really tell you how far it must be, because the algorithm is it's very difficult to reason about that. So that's the current implementation of Krisp. But at the same time, we're working on a technology now which we call mute other voices, right? Which will allow you to only leave your voice, like no matter who is speaking around you, it will only your voice will go through, basically, and the background noise will be canceled as well, right? So I think that's going to be quite transformational for the communication, like especially when you do it from mobile. You're in airport, there is an announcement in the back, and all of that. So you can always very confidently take your calls and speak by being sure that only you sound professional. And we have the technology in our lab already, and we are working to productize it and ship inside Krisp.
Okay.
And there it's going to, adapt to your voice, basically.
Okay.
That's the idea.
And just actually on that, I think you mentioned it briefly earlier as well. I haven't tried Krisp yet with an actual conversation with somebody. I just tried it to see how it works and how it sounded to myself. But is there any noticeable latency between the person talking and then the Krisp signal?
You won't notice that.
Okay.
So it doesn't impact the conversation at all. But if you start measuring the latency, there will be latency of 20 to 40 milliseconds. In the conversation.
No, I mean, these things are amazing. I've been doing audio production for some time. I remember when recording a guitar with effects on, latency was just always there. And then at some point it went and it never came back. And most machines these days can.
Yeah. So, going back to your question about, how we run this on CPUs, right? One thing that I would like to mention is that, we have been working with Intel for a year already with their engineers. And, Intel is, their new chipset has a AI accelerator chip inside. And we have our algorithms to run on this accelerator. And the cool thing is, once that chipset is launched, so we will offload all the algorithms into that AI accelerator. And then, the CPU won't be used at all. Okay. So that's very cool. And that's where the world is moving, right? Yeah. Every device is going to have something like that.
But on that note, so you said you're working on an iOS or iPhone, I suppose is more useful version. And you've exclusively so far worked with Intel, but that's a switch to ARM style. So has that been challenging or?
No, not really. So, when you implement a machine learning algorithm, at the end of the day, most of them, are simply matrix multiplications under the hood, right? Sure. So, and there are libraries, there are, algorithms that make that efficient for your target platform. So we use, libraries for Intel to do that, and we also have the implementation for ARM. And most of the phones have also a AI accelerator on them already, like supplied by Qualcomm. So that's for Apple is different. But yeah, so we are going to leverage these chips to make them power efficient and fast and so on.
Okay. And
so but it hasn't been a challenge for us. Basically.
Okay, no worries. I wasn't 100% sure. Just because you mentioned it, I wasn't sure how much you were leveraging it. But yeah, for sure. I mean, I guess the bigger issues there are going to be things like it's just we say smartphones are more restrained, but they're really not these days. Apart from on battery, that's the only real limitation these days. Some of them are more powerful than some laptops. So
yeah, exactly. Like if you asked whether we can, move this technology into headsets, or headphones, no, not today.
That would be nice, but yeah. Although, I mean, noise cancelling headphones and things exist, and they have their issues, but they're okay.
Well, it's for, but the use case is very different for them, right?
For sure. Okay, so let's talk about the business. It's interesting. I've seen a couple of. I think the pricing, as far as I'm aware, is relatively new. So I guess it's still a little bit maybe not consistent on a couple of places on the website. So free, you could listen without noise. Pro, you could speak and listen without noise. So you can make other people's audio better on free, but on Pro you can make your audio better. That would be the thing there. I also saw in a support section that I think maybe I misread this. It sounded like it said removing noise cancelling from other participants, and I thought that meant like you could kind of almost just improve their audio for them, but I guess you're just improving what you're hearing, not them.
Yes. This is for you. This is basically the listening part.
Yeah,
right?
for
you
sure.
Can listen. Yeah,
for sure. Yep. And then of course on from that you have Teams, which is just sort of centralizing billing, and then you start to look at this enterprise and call centers, which is where I think it will get interesting, and it's probably going to be your main revenue in the long run, trying to actually get, I guess, Zoom and Skype and all these companies to just basically license your algorithm. I suppose.
No, not really. That's not
okay.
how I see the world.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I don't see licensing out this technology
Okay.
to bigger companies.
Okay.
We see this as a separate business.
Okay.
Actually, like Krisp is about making people professional,
Yeah.
and noise cancellation is just one part of it,
Yeah.
right? So we have a very long list of things that we are going to add to Krisp, and it's not only going to be about voice and audio. So like the whole idea of Krisp is to, remote work is everywhere today, and companies are embracing that. That's a fact, right? And we believe that with these AI accelerators being on every, personal device, is going to enable disruptions into how people work remotely, right? How professional they are. So we see Krisp in that space, and we see adding a lot of value directly to users and enterprises. And our business is going to be just like as it's today. So we are going to, sell Krisp licenses to enterprises and to users.
And actually, talking about kind of going enterprise and team-wide, I know personally from trying to use it to record that audio is not great on Android, but have you at least experimented with an Android version?
Recording?
Yeah. So you said you're working on an iOS prototype. Have you thought about an Android as well?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we have it working on Android as well. And the phone version, Krisp phone, is going to be a bit different. And then the reason is you can't be a virtual microphone there, right? It's going to have a bit of a different form there. But it's going to support both.
Okay.
Absolutely.
No, I know I've tried, and I currently have a problem with I think the latest Android OS breaks USB-C audio. Whereas the previous version, it worked fine. So there you go.
Don't update. Yeah.
So sometimes Android is weird with audio. It's kind of annoying. Okay. And I think I got this right. But you're based. You're sort of based in Armenia, or some of the team, or.
We have two offices. Yeah. We have one in Berkeley, California, but the bigger office is in Armenia. Okay. And I share my time between the two offices, mostly in Armenia because our product and engineering is here now.
No, for sure. That's a usual setup, isn't it?
We have business and sales in US, and most of the enterprise part where you see, right, enterprise is being driven by the US team.
Yeah. Okay, no, that makes sense. It was just interesting because a few years ago I actually went to an Armenian tech evening in Berlin. And I've written a lot around startup scenes in countries kind of bordering Europe. I've done Ukraine, Belarus, a lot of the Balkans. And next on my list are Georgia and Armenia. So what's it like running a tech startup in Armenia?
Well, so I think...
Or what's it like running half a tech startup in Armenia?
Well, the tech scene is booming here.
Yeah.
If I were to say it very short, that's what I would say. And there is a lot of excitement, and there are a lot of Armenia historically had a lot of good mathematical and physics institutions, and many of them have been transformed into growing engineers, right? So we have a very good engineering school here, and for some time the companies have been working mostly as outsourcing companies, in the last 20 years. But now in the last, I would say 5 to 6 years, new startups have been emerged here. Yeah. And I think one of the biggest one is PixArt. I don't know if you heard about them. They're pretty big in their mobile app.
No, I think they were at that night actually. Yeah.
Okay, very cool. So I mean, so new startups are emerging, and this is going to continue because when you look at the new generation, what kind of education they're getting, I have no doubt that in the next 10 years, there are going to be billion-dollar companies coming out of this country. And this combination of having multinational sort of setup, right, like US and Armenia, I think it plays, it's the best setup here because you have access to markets such as US, but you also have access to the engineering pool and the talent pool here in Armenia.
Yeah.
So we as a company are very happy with this.
Okay, good. And is it relatively? It sounds like a lot of countries are kind of the southeastern fringe of Europe, in that you had good talent. I'm not sure it was. Armenia was never part of the USSR, was it? No, but
USSR. Oh, it was.
It was. Okay, so yeah, a similar story in that it got a lot of good technical education, and for many years, people were working in outsourcing, getting really good experience, and then just now, all those people are a bit bored with working for other people and trying their own things, and it's a really good time to be doing.
I blame TechCrunch for that. They read all these articles. All these successful startups.
But it's also interesting because Ukraine, for example, I went to Ukraine 2.5 years ago, and they said, "Oh yeah, we've got great engineers, great products, but we don't know how to sell." And then I came back a year later, and they'd learned how to sell. And they move. Everyone's moving very, very quickly.
It's the same challenge, right? If you don't have access to the international, if you don't have experience with international business, right, or not international, just businesses like how business is done in US, it's very hard to sell from here. So that's why, for us, it was very important that I have spent my 9 years in US, and I know how the business works there. And our chief operating officer, he's based in Berkeley. He knows how. So there must be a combination of these two. Sure. Otherwise, it won't work. Yeah, it will be very hard.
I think it's. I love. This is the reason I love going and speaking to people in these sorts of countries, because when you go to Germany, France, UK, even the US to a certain extent, but it just obviously is so well known. They have enough of their own market, so they could sometimes be a little lazy. Whereas the smaller, newer countries, they have to go international from day zero, so they do much more interesting things.
That's so true.
Yeah. Anyway.
Hey, by the way, there is going to be, October is a tech month here in Armenia, and there are a lot of conferences, and actually World Congress of Information Technology, WCIT, is going to be held in Armenia. So a lot of international guests. So if you plan to do that, and visiting Armenia at some point,
I did have some contacts of some people to follow up with in Armenia and Georgia. October is a busy time for conferences. It may or may not clash with something else, but I'll double check, because that would be interesting, and it'd be a good time to come because it started getting colder in Northern Europe. So just to wrap up, what's the plan for the next 6 months?
Next 6 months. Well, we have a very intense technology and product roadmap. I can't disclose too much on our secret things that we're going to launch, but mobile is definitely going to be there in the next 6 months, right? For Android and for iOS. And Krisp desktop is going to get just better in its quality and everything as a product. And we have a number of partnerships that we are going to execute in the enterprise and as well as consumer podcasting space. So stay tuned.
And that was my interview with David from Krisp.ai. If you have enjoyed the show, you can find previous episodes at christianschiller.com/podcast. You can sign up for the newsletter that accompanies this podcast at christianschiller.com/newsletters. And you can find many more of the projects that I am working on at christianschiller.com too. I'm going to keep my kind of exit words brief today and just say that you can find all the various things I've been working on there recently. It's still a little bit of a lull in getting my post published, but I have some more coming soon, I promise. But you could still find some of the other projects I have been working on in the meantime. And I'm about to enter some events again soon, so take a look at my events page to see where we can maybe meet up and have a conversation, synchronous or asynchronous, however you prefer. And if you have been, until the next time, thank you very much for listening.